Hello everyone, I'm Rahul and I welcome you to this second session of Gautam Buddha series. In this session, I'll briefly tell you Gautam Buddha's life story. Basically, his life story is a journey of transformation. He was born as Gautam Siddharth and he transformed into Gautam Buddha. And the core difference between these two lives is said to be enlightenment. Gautam Siddharth was unenlightened and he took a journey that made him enlightened. So the meaning of the word Buddha simply is the enlightened one. Now, what is the difference between enlightenment and unenlightenment? First of all, enlightenment is a very heavy and loaded word with so many different meanings and definitions. So right now I will just give you a very basic understanding of the word. And as you will progress on this journey of learning, as you will grow in understanding, you will realize the true meaning of the word yourself. And then you will become capable of rejecting all the airy-fairy fluff that is accepted in the name of enlightenment. So what is enlightenment? Pay attention to it. Enlightened one is someone who has a crystal clear view of the reality, a right view of the reality, and because of it, he clearly perceives the cause and nature of human suffering and he consciously decides to get rid of the cause. Unenlightened one is someone who has a twisted view of the reality, a delusional view of the reality, and because of it, he is unclear about the cause and nature of human suffering, and in his unconsciousness, he goes on practicing the cause of suffering without realizing it, and he makes his life more and more miserable. So anyone who can develop a right view towards reality, anyone who can get to the very source of human suffering, anyone who then consciously decide to get rid of the cause can become a Buddha. So you don't have to go to the jungles, you don't have to go to the monasteries in order to be a Buddha. It is a possibility in your daily life. And enlightenment only has value if it is a possibility in the mundanity of life. If you have to escape somewhere to attain it, then it will lose all the texture of aliveness. It will become a dead thing. Now, of course, this is not the only criteria to define enlightenment. Because you cannot define a multi-layered phenomena with just one parameter. Just like you cannot paint a rainbow with just one color. But you have to begin somewhere. So right now just stick to this one parameter, and as you will grow in your understanding, more and more layers of the phenomena will become available to you. As you will become free from suffering, you will become more peaceful, more joyful, more blissful, more compassionate, more loving, more relaxed. But right now, let's just focus on this one parameter, the parameter of suffering, because Buddha emphasized on it again and again. In fact, someone asked Buddha that, what is your core teaching? Buddha said that I only teach suffering and the cessation of suffering. Now, before I begin this story, I want to be clear about one thing. First off, do not care about the accuracy or the source of the story. Because who knows how much of what we know about Buddha is real and how much of it is made up. There is no criteria to end up with any sort of conclusion. So let's not get into this argument of fact versus fiction. That way, we dissipate a great deal of energy in futile mental battle. I think our intent should be to take something meaningful out of his story. If there is an opportunity to learn something from his life, if there is an opportunity to apply something in your life that might actually transform your life, why miss the opportunity? Why get into this stupid mental conflict of fact versus fiction? It does not make any sense. Okay? Now I have divided Buddha's life story in three different parts. First is pre-transformation, when he was Siddharth. Second is journey of transformation, when Siddharth took the journey to become a Buddha. And the third is transformation, the exact moment when Siddharth transformed into Buddha. So let's begin with the first aspect, which is pre-transformation. So around 2500 years ago, a boy was born in a royal family in a place called Lumini, which is now in Nepal. His name was Gautam Siddharth. So when he was born, his father, the king, called all the famous astrologers from all over the world, because he wanted to know the future of his child. So when all the astrologers gathered in his court, he asked them, now tell me, what is your prediction? What do you think that the future might hold for my child? So all the astrologers said that there are two possibilities. Either he will become a world ruler who will rule the whole world, or he will become a great saint who will renounce the whole world. So, out of all the astrologers, there was one young astrologer too. And he said that there is only one possibility. He will become a great saint. He will renounce the whole kingdom. He will renounce the whole world. He will move into the forest. He will meditate and he will attain to Buddhahood. He will become enlightened. And he will be one of the greatest sages that the humanity will ever see. He will be a blessing for the whole humanity. Now, after listening to this, the king was a little puzzled, but he was not worried at all. He thought that how much can a young astrologer know? If all the old people are saying that there are two possibilities, then perhaps there are two possibilities. So he asked all the old people that suggest me a way to ensure that Siddhartha never leaves the kingdom, he never renounces the world. So after having a deep discussion, all the old people came up with a solution. They suggested to the king that the child should be kept away from anything that might remind him of old age, ill health, death, and sannyas. They said that just make sure that he remains oblivious of these four facts of life: old age, illness, death, and sannyas. So they asked the king to make beautiful palaces for him. In India, there are 4 seasons, so make different palaces for different seasons and make it almost like a paradise with beautiful gardens, acres and acres of flowers, with beautiful architecture. And make sure that no ill person, no old person, no sannyasi should ever enter the gate of the palace. And he should never come across the phenomena of death. So if there are dead leaves in the garden, make sure that someone removes them before Siddhartha sees it. Siddhartha should never get to know that flowers bloom and eventually fade away. Secondly, they asked the king to make sure that he's kept continuously entertained. He should be surrounded by all the beautiful women of the kingdom, and he should be indulged in all kind of pleasures all the time, be it wine, music, dance, women, so that he becomes exhausted and tired with pleasure, with the continuous supply of pleasure, and the desire to attain enlightenment might never arise in him. So this is how it was managed for around 29-30 years. Whenever Siddhartha would go out of the palace to the town, the whole town was cleaned of all the old people, ill people, dead bodies, and the sannyasi. This whole thing was running so smoothly, but one day something happened. Now it is a parable, so don't take it literally. The parable says that one day all the gods became worried in heavens. They became worried because Siddhartha was continuously occupied with pleasure. And they thought that if this is how Siddhartha is going to waste his life in continuous entertainment and pleasure, then when will he become Buddha? And when will he go and serve the humanity? It seems that Siddhartha is simply wasting his life. He's wasting the opportunity. So they decided that we have to do something about it. The time has come to intervene. So after a discussion among themselves, they decided that we will confront Siddhartha and we will appear in front of him in form of an ill person, old person, as a dead body, and as a sannyasi. So one day Siddhartha had to go out to inaugurate a youth festival. So the gods decided that today is the right day. It is the right opportunity to confront Siddhartha. So when Siddhartha's chariot was moving out of the palace, the first god appeared in the form of an old person. And when Siddhartha looked at that old person, he was really shocked because he had never ever seen any old person. So he asked the charioteer that what has happened to this man. Now, of course, the charioteer was not allowed to say the truth. So one god entered the charioteer's body and he replied that he is an old person. And everyone is bound to become old one day. So Siddhartha asked, will it happen to me as well? The charioteer said that yes, you will also become old. And then he asked, will it happen to my beautiful wife Yashodhara? And the charioteer replied, yes, she will also become old. And then he asked that, will my newly born son Rahul, he also will become old? And the charioteer replied, yes, of course. Becoming old is an eternal truth of life. It is an undeniable truth of life. You cannot avoid it. So Siddhartha was really, really shocked, but he remained silent. And as they moved ahead further, another god appeared in the form of an ill person. The ill person was coughing, crying in pain, spitting, and Siddharth was really shocked because he had never ever confronted someone ill. So again, he asked the same questions to the charioteer. What has happened to this man? And the charioteer replied that he is an ill person and everyone is bound to become ill one day. Siddhartha asked, will I also become ill one day? Will my beautiful wife Yashodhara also become ill one day? Will my newly born son Rahul will also become ill one day? And the charioteer said, yes, illness is an undeniable truth of life. Anyone and everyone is bound to become ill at some point in life. Again, Siddhartha was shocked and he remained silent. And as they moved ahead further, another god appeared in the form of a dead body. Some people were carrying the dead body to cremate. And Siddhartha again asked the same questions. What has happened to this man? And the charioteer replied, he is dead and death is bound to happen to everyone. Death is the eternal truth of life. One day you will also become dead. Your beautiful wife Yashodhara, your newly born child Rahul, they all will become dead. And at this point, Siddhartha was deeply, deeply shattered because he could not conceive the idea of death. He could not conceive the idea of discontinuity, coming to an end. And it was very, very shattering for Siddhartha. So he remained silent. And as they moved ahead further, last god appeared as a sannyasi. So Siddhartha again asked the same questions that who is this man and why is he wearing only a piece of cloth? The sannyasi was wearing a yellow robe. So the charioteer replied that he is a sannyasi. He has realized that this life is full of suffering. Birth is suffering, old age is suffering, illness is suffering. And now he is trying to invest his remaining time to find something which is beyond suffering. He's trying to find out whether there is a space, whether there is a way of life which is beyond suffering. And he is investing his time and energy in that pursuit. So Siddhartha asked the charioteer to stop because the idea appealed to him. He thought that if death has to happen one day, then it has already happened. Why go on postponing it, thinking that it will not happen to me? He said that if death has to happen, then it has already happened to me. If old age illness has to happen, it has already happened to me. Why go on postponing it? So he asked the charioteer to turn around. And that very night, he left the palace. He moved into the forest in search of truth. Now, this is the beginning of Siddharth's journey of transformation. From this point, Siddhartha takes a journey that transforms him into a Buddha. Now, talking about his journey of transformation, it is said about Buddha that he was one of the most sincere students. In his search for truth, he went everywhere, from one guru to another guru. And for 6 years, he constantly wandered in the jungles. He was hankering for truth, hankering for enlightenment, but he could not attain it. For 6 years, he tried hard, harder than any man has ever tried, and he was reaching nowhere. So one day he was sitting under a tree on a full moon night, and he looked back at his life. He thought that 6 years have passed since I have left the palace, since I have left my wife, my child, and it seems I am reaching nowhere. I am still the same person. I have done everything that is written in the scriptures. I have done everything that the teachers have asked me to do, and I have done it with such totality that I now think that there is nothing more to be done. And he thought that this whole project of enlightenment seems to be going down the drain. The project has failed. But right in that moment, he became aware of something. Now pay attention here because this is the exact moment of transformation. This is the moment when Siddhartha is having a crystal clear view of the reality for the very first time. This is the moment when Siddhartha is transforming into a Buddha. He thought that although 6 years have passed since I have left the palace, but I'm still the same person. The same ego, the same ambition, the same desire to conquer. Earlier, this desire was worldly. Earlier, I used to desire beautiful women, beautiful wines, but now I am desiring the other worldly things. the Enlightenment, cessation of suffering, Buddhahood. So, what is the difference between these two states? Apart from the object of the desires, one thing is consistent, and the consistent thing is desire. So, right in that moment, he perceived the cause of suffering. He thought that perhaps this desire is the cause of suffering. And in that very moment, the desire dropped itself. Now, when we say that anyone who can consciously decide to drop the cause of suffering can become a Buddha, of course, it is something that you say in a particular way. But the nature of this whole process is that the moment you become conscious of the desire, the moment you clearly sees that this is the cause of suffering, it drops away on its own accord. Just like when you touch a hot surface, you don't have to move your hand with an effort. It happens effortlessly. Right away it happens. You take away your hand. In the same way, the moment you perceive it clearly that this desire is the cause of suffering, desire drops away on its own accord. And that is what happened in that moment. And he became a Buddha. That night, as the moon rose, a totally new being arose in him. A desireless consciousness, a non-ambitious being. For the very first time in the 6 years, he was not desiring anything worldly, anything otherworldly. He was completely relaxed in the moment. And this is what happens when someone becomes enlightened, right? The moment desire ceases to be, the moment your mental energy is not occupied in something which is bound to happen in the future, you are suddenly thrown away in this present moment. You're completely relaxed. You're completely here. You're completely now. You might have heard this thing, be here now. Whenever someone talks about meditation, these are the words that people talk about, be here, be now. But it only becomes a possibility when you get rid of the desire. With desire, it is not a possibility. So you have to attain a desireless consciousness, a non-ambitious being, to be here, to be now. Now, what is the core message of this whole parable? Basically, Siddhartha was suffering because of a desiring consciousness. He was constantly desiring something worldly or otherworldly. And Buddha became free of suffering by attaining a desireless consciousness. So desire is the root cause of all suffering. Desire is what keeps you away from the fullness of this moment. Desire is what keeps you constantly dissatisfied. Now, this whole thing is very easy to understand intellectually. But the moment you want to live like this, it becomes very difficult. Why? Because our nature is such. The way the nature has designed us, it is almost impossible for us to live without desires. Right? And Buddha is saying that there is a possibility to go beyond this design, our default design. And his whole work is to make you transcend this design, to make you go beyond this design so that you can attain desireless consciousness, so that you can become free from suffering. So I hope that you got some sort of an insight out of this whole session. And in the next session, we will enter into the teachings of Buddha. And I think I'll see you there. Thank you.